Hello and welcome to Weltall podcast, where a few pictures are quite literally worth thousands of words. I'm your host, Inro Whiteline, and as usual, I won't be able to do it all of this without Zach.
Hello.
Hey Zach. So it's September already,
Yep, it's September.
and do you know what else is going to happen in September?
Uh, the Switch version is coming out.
Yes, pretty much. And that's basically why Light are apparently on this new streak, which means that we are going to have quite a lot to discuss today. In fact, we already had new points of discussion last week, and this week we got even more. So I assume this will be quite a long podcast. So strap in and we will, I suppose, begin with the last week's stream.
Yes.
Yes. So last week we had a regular live stream of Happy Light Cafe, which they dedicate to their new projects, including projects by their Morgue Division campus, which took most of the episode this time. But still, we did get some Pantheon news along the way, even if we were actually promised some news on the Switch version. But it ended up mostly being dedicated to Pantheon. So uh, it's quite a lot to digest. So basically, Light have figured out that people have been wanting to get some explanations of what exactly is taking Pantheon so long to come out. Because it has been revealed more than a year ago. We were promised to see it released around winter, and it just never really came out. And it wasn't really the fact of the delay itself that annoyed people, but rather the fact that we had complete radio silence about it. Like we had people telling us that the work is going on and the game is going to be great, but nothing really besides that. And that is why this episode of Happy Late Cafe was pretty damn interesting, because Light have actually talked a lot about the process of Pantheon's development. And that,
Not all that a lot about the development, but
well,
rather they just explained why there wasn't any
yeah,
development.
basically, yes. And it's way more than we would expect from other Japanese companies, really.
Yeah, it's it should be noted that they never named super aptly. They just said the company we worked with before.
Yes, yes.
Obviously, for obvious reasons, because if they were to mention super athlete, would be probably be slander to some level, and they can't. They can't
Yeah,
do that.
it's an adult world with adult problems that we
Yeah,
just
yeah.
don't really have much idea about. But
Yeah.
anyway, as you have said, it's mostly slander in Super Apple's uh, garden. So basically, as we were explained, uh,
And as we suspected,
yes, as we suspected, most of work on Light's side, as in the artwork, the music, the voice acting, and similar parts of what makes uh,
the
Light.
game,
Oh,
the
well,
game,
yes, most of what makes the game was done last year. And they did indeed aim for the winter release.
they
But
actually they actually even said that the game could have was planned to have come out as earlier as spring 2017, which is interesting because spring 2017 was when the game was announced. And
Yeah, I don't think it's the case. I think they said it's either this winter, this last winter, I mean, or spring after it at the
yeah,
latest.
yeah,
Uh, so like around March or something.
yeah,
But anyway, they unfortunately couldn't do it because Super Applet just was not in a position to actually produce the game. We don't have any details about it, but we can guess that uh, they don't really have enough time or manpower to do it right now. Apparently, they got one of their games bought out, and that basically means that everything is not going great for them.
yeah,
Uh, and that means Light have to find a new actual developer of the game because they themselves don't really have any experience with coding any games for mobile devices. They don't have any server support in the resume, and so they apparently found a new producer, and it's
the representative from Light actually kind of said that they were looking. They were going for several developers, and it was like, and it wasn't working out. Like they went to one developer and it didn't quite work out, and then to another one. Like it
yeah.
took them a while, and eventually they found what he described as a wonderful company. He did say, however, that it's a company that, like, he didn't mention the name and said that even if he would, we probably wouldn't know it because it's a small developer.
And they have
Uh,
no experience with developing games in
yes, but at the
particular.
that's not exactly what he said. He did. They are apparently some kind of. He also said that they have no experience with server issues, which is odd because it would seem kind of self-explanatory, but that leads me to believe that they might actually have some development, maybe in development of games or development of apps,
Yes, I suppose that it's
and only
something like a web
it,
application, maybe.
perhaps yes, and but they simply have no experience in developing a social game,
Yeah, yeah.
which is worrying in and of itself.
Yes. Well, first of all, I should finish that they apparently found this company around February, and they only managed to finish all their bureaucratic stuff around this July. So they were actually planning to release the name of this company this week, but apparently something is taking them a bit longer than they assumed. So we are likely to see it revealed around September. I'm not sure if it's going to be sooner rather
Possibly,
than later,
possibly
but probably
towards the end
later.
of. I think it'll be at the end because up until now, if you actually look at the sites, at the Pantheon site's update history, they always all the updates came on the 31st of a month. It came on
Yes,
June
yes.
31st, then on July 31st, now on August 31st, and the next one
Well,
will probably come on September 30th.
yeah. For now, all we have to ponder on is the fact itself that the game is in fact nowhere near done at this moment. Even though we do have lots of artwork, we have confirmed voice actors, we have a lot of music done, but yeah, who knows how long it will take from now on.
Yep. It also calls into validity the screenshots that the voice actors said they've seen last year. Uh,
Yes. Well,
it
it was
calls
this year, actually.
It was this year, last well, yeah, it was this year actually. Yes,
Yeah.
but it calls into validity those screenshots how much they're relevant.
Yeah, I'm honestly pretty disappointed about it because I remember discussing it with some other DS fans who were assuming that Yuan is basically lying to save face for her
I
company.
don't. I don't think she was lying, but the point is that she wouldn't say something bad. That was the whole point there.
Yeah, basically. Still, it does cast a lot of doubt on everything we have seen up until this point. Because
Um,
if you see the timeline of Pantheon's reveal, so to say, then it really is apparent that all we have seen up to this point is basically artwork, music, and some voice acting. And besides that, we only had some general talks about, oh, we are working on it and it's going to be great, and it just have to take a little while longer.
well, so there was that one Happy Light Cafe where a representative from Light basically said that things weren't going so well.
Yes, it was
Uh,
around April, I believe. April or
yeah,
May, basically.
yeah. Um, it does cast doubt. I don't think that the game is like. The thing is, I think on a concept level, the Light has a good vision of how the game should look.
Yes, agree.
So things that we have heard or speculated about in terms of the concept are likely to remain the same. The thing is
Yes,
just on terms of code, nothing was apparently very little was actually coded
yes.
during the period with Super Apply. So apparently they're doing it, but it's
Well,
also
even
worth
if they did have some coding done, now
it,
that
it got
Super Apply doesn't work on the game, they just can't
it
use
got
it.
canned. Yeah, it got
Yes.
canned. It Another thing is that the representative from Light also said that like they're a wonderful company and their skill in programming is solid and they have no problems. They have no documented server issues. Which I want to believe him. I want to believe him. Then again, who can tell at
Yes,
this
again,
point?
it's a question of trust basically at this point because not only do we have all these promises about Pantheon's release, but we also have the anime that was actually uh, mm, pretty disappointing for some people, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, Light did say before its airing that yes, we have a great studio working on it. We have a great director that has Masada's approval. We have Masada himself working on the script, and it's going to be great. And now that we are basically going through the same motions with Pantheon, people are a bit more dubious about all of it.
Yes, of course. Well, that said, I think in terms of writing, there's less to worry about because that's Masada directly and not Masada
Yes, of
direct.
course.
And like, I'm assuming it'll be like in a visual novel style. So
Yeah,
that's something we know Masada can do well enough. And of course, in terms of music and art, the game looks and sounds great so far.
yes.
But yeah, we really need to hope that the game itself ends up being good, despite all of the questionable factors right now.
Yes, and it is worth repeating that basically the concept of the game itself is pretty likely to stay the same, if only because they do want to retain all this work they have already done. So, for example, if they voiced some lines for a particular gameplay aspect, then it's likely to stay in the game, if only because they don't want to throw away all the work done on it.
That, and I think that Masada has a lot of creative vision of his own for the game's
Yeah,
mechanics.
yeah. I suppose. We don't really know any big names in the gameplay aspects of it, so we can't really say that, oh, this has such and such working on it, and that means the game is going to be great. We only have the script writer, the artist, and the voice actors, and that's honestly quite a lot, but it's still not everything. So people have the right to remain skeptical about all of it.
Then again, the I think one of the perhaps comforting aspects of a mobile game is that it has time. It has the option to evolve and develop.
Yes, yes, it's
It's
always.
entirely. It's always possible for them to patch stuff in, and they do patch stuff in regularly. Like Fate Grand Order, when it just started, was a lot less user friendly, and to be honest, it was half the time not functional at all.
Yes,
And
yeah,
now
basically.
it's a lot more convenient, and there's hardly any downtime. So you know,
Although there is still room for growth, even
of,
years
no,
later.
no, of course, but that's just to say that even catastrophic beginnings, which is actually very common in social
Yes,
games.
yes, of course, because they always tend
Most
to underestimate the amount of people who are going to play it.
yes. So yes, catastrophic beginnings are very common in social games. So that's not unusual. And in the end, I think also like social game players are more patient of bad or problematic releases
Yeah,
because they
yes,
that
I suppose.
that most games start badly.
And of course, there is always the option of just Canyon Pantheon and releasing it as a visual novel, which we
Yes,
were promised quite a while ago.
yes, and well, I know there's quite a bit of people who are just wishing for that. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, although I do believe that good gameplay is going to reinforce the entire point, and
hopefully,
I'd rather
hopefully.
have it than not have it. Alright, so just in case I asked, I actually have my older brother working in the industry, and I asked him just how long can this take, and he basically couldn't answer me because he just doesn't have enough data on his hands, and so I can only repeat his answer that we have no idea how long it is going to take. It might seem like not much work left to do, like, oh, they already have all the artwork, all the music, and they just have to write some code and put it all together, but it's not that easy.
So
Uh,
what you're saying is that you're John Pantheon's younger brother, and we should come to you whenever there's
yes,
questions
yes,
about.
exactly. I'm saying exactly that, and I'm saying that we will see the alarm up released this year, probably. But no, really, it doesn't take a lot to code, actually, and it really does mostly consist of artwork and voice acting. And it does make sense that we were promised it so long ago, because they did not actually have any code done for the game, but they had all this artwork and voice acting, and they figured, oh, we might as well put something together with all of this. And so, if they
Hopefully.
didn't actually scrap this project altogether, I do believe we will see it this year.
We can only hope so.
Yes, so we can actually uh, get some wake up calls from Spin and Rusalka and such.
Hopefully, hopefully.
Yes. Anyway,
I actually recently got an Azur Lane alarm app, and let me tell you, having an anime girl scream at you every morning helps get you out of bed whether you like it or not.
I wouldn't think you would pick Screaming Girls, but okay.
Well, that's just how she wakes you up.
Oh, well, anyways, so that was not the only thing we actually got from Happy Light Cafe, as we also got two more artworks of the thrones. And one of them actually was pretty surprising because it was Ren sitting on the throne.
Yes.
And the other one was Hajun sitting on the throne, so to say. And so we naturally assume that we will going to get all the remaining gods when the website is going to be updated. But a few days ago the update arrived, and we did get a lot of new gods and new thrones, but we still are missing the very last throne of Amaterasu. And that actually makes sense, I suppose, because they do want to actually leave something for another update. And we did get Shinga released all by herself, and so they are not beyond revealing them one by one. But anyway,
But then again, here we got four at once, so it's
yes,
yeah.
and well, I don't know. I suppose it makes sense because we have the Switch version coming soon, and it just wouldn't make much sense to hide it for too long, because I assume we are going to see all of the thrones again in the Switch version. And why hide it now if we are going to see it in the game itself? And so I suppose we can just move on to discuss this update of the website. And we will begin with the all too familiar Golden Beast, who is looking as fabulous as always.
Yes.
Man.
By the way, an interesting point to mention is that Mercurius, Reinhardt, and actually even Mari, all of their poses under form portraits are actually identical to their LDO tapestry.
Yes, we did mention it with Mercurius when we
Yes.
discussed.
Now, if anyone is, pardon me for cutting off. If anyone is confused what I mean by LDO tapestry for Mari, there was actually an LDO tapestry release where you see her sitting in her beautiful dress, and Ren in an LDO uniform holding her hand.
Yes.
Which puts Ren at the interesting position of being the only existing Dies Irae character to have an entirely new pose on his throne portrait. So it's just a nice convention.
Yes, it's like I said, it's basically everyone who actually was affected by Mercurius and his foreknowledge, and that's why they're still sitting in the same positions, except for Ren, who in his rebellious phase took his own pose and just kind of sitting awkwardly on his chair now.
I told you I don't want to be God, damn it.
Yes. Anyway, so speaking of people who actually want to be gods, we have Reinhardt, who again is sitting in his old pose, but has an entirely new throne all to himself. And I gotta say, it's so damn metal that it's pretty hard for me not to growl looking at it.
It has golden skeletons, dude!
Golden skeletons, it actually has its own mane.
Yes.
Actually, I would say it's basically mane and fangs and claws, and that's about it.
Yes.
Because that's basically the only parts of the beast that were ever mentioned in the game.
Yes.
Say, Carl, shouldn't there be something else to it? No, it's fine.
We don't need anything else.
Yes, so. As always, we have a short description of the throne, except for, well, it doesn't actually have a number because Reinhardt never actually took the throne, and so I suppose I should leave it to you because you were the one who translated it this time.
Okay. So the name of the throne is Dies Irae. Um,
Which
the
I should mention is actually the same as his emanation, which is
Yes,
not the case with Mercurius.
but it is the case for Ren.
Yes,
Um,
and I assume it's all because they were not actually.
they never got a throne.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and they only emanated.
Which below that is called the Golden Sublime Path of Carnage.
Hmm.
His quote is the all too familiar "I love everything in creation, therefore I shall destroy everything."
Although I should mention that the website kind of misspelled it and doesn't use the usual kanji, which is
For what?
for subite,
Yeah.
and I hope someone got fired because of it.
Yes.
Anyways.
Um, and the quote is as follows: "The name of that god is the gold, a god slayer born from a god's apoptosis, a desire for self-destruction. Having lived for far too long, the Mercury fell into despair and desired his own death, creating the gold as a being that could slay him. For this reason, the two are his parent and child, bosom friends, and simultaneously both irreconcilable enemies and inseparable companions that share their fate with one another. As the gold is the incarnation of the Mercury's desire for self-destruction, should the later perish, so would the former. For this reason, while the gold achieved the status of a god, he could never claim the throne."
Yes, and it's basically everything we have already known. But still, it's like the third time I see people uh, reacting like, wait, are they actually gay for each other? And I'm like, have you actually seen Reinhardt? How can you not be gay for him?
Yes, yes.
I mean,
Wouldn't you?
I mean, it's been 11 years since people have coined the term gar for this exact purpose.
Well, sort of. Sort of.
Yeah,
And it's been more than, 11 years. A little more, I think.
yeah.
But,
Well, either way, yes, it's not really a secret at this point, so I'm just kinda amused that people are still find it surprising. Uh, but yeah, it's actually nothing new. And well, besides the fact that he actually did get a throne on the website, which kinda makes me wonder if Amaterasu is going to maybe have a couple of them and not just one. Because there is this entire theme of the Sephiroths that is likely to be important, and we might have 10 thrones and not 9, which we have at this point.
though it's worth noting that, like, a seventh heaven, like, is, the seventh heaven is, is an existing term for, like, the highest level of heaven.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
that's in. When we got to the seventh heaven in Kachurika Kamukakura, it seemed like we finally reached the typological number
Yeah,
that
yeah. And
that
not to
magic
mention that
number.
the number 7 itself is very symbolic.
Yes, exactly.
Various
That's why the seven.
cultures.
Yes. So we assumed it, and hence like the sixth heaven being the most incomplete because it's one short of completion.
Yes, and we also have the whole Buddhist idea of Dairok 10.
Yes, yes. So that was interesting, but we'll see. We do know, however, that Reinhardt and later on Ren haven't actually achieved the throne, and the site does acknowledge this,
Yes.
as if to say, yeah, they're not actual gods. And if you look up in the top of the world page, you
Yes.
have icons that let you jump to each section of the page, and as you can see, that the moment and the gold aren't actually like
Numbered.
they're just moment in gold and they're not numbered thrones.
Yes.
Yes.
Although it is worth mentioning that when Ren's throne was revealed on the stream, people were kind of confused because, wait, does that actually mean that there is some parallel universe where Ren actually takes the throne? But doesn't Mercurius actually reign over the entire multiverse? So even if it did happen in some parallel universe, it would have extrapolated over the entire multiverse. Well, I suppose it's just a lot of smoking opium on their side because, well, the developers can still make what if scenarios which don't actually fit in the narrative of the games.
Yes.
Uh, well, besides that, we also got Reinhardt's emblem for the first time because back when we got the emblems of the Seven Thrones, naturally the book didn't actually have the emblems for the gods which did not achieve the throne. And so this is the first time we have Reinhardt's emblem. And I gotta say I'm pretty damn impressed by it, just because it fits so much into it.
Yes.
So we have the first thing you notice is of course the Longinus lance in the middle of it. Which
Yes.
makes sense because it's the symbol of the God Slayer, it's the tool of a God Slayer, it's the entire point of Reinhardt's existence. Then you notice that it does have all the runes of the LDO members at its sides. And yes, it's exactly the same runes which correspond to all the LDO members. The Elder Futhark does have more than 13 of them, but here we only have exactly the ones which correspond to the LDO members, except for one. And I suppose I shouldn't tell you which one is absent.
Yes.
Yes, it's almost like you know it in advance. And
God damn it.
and then we have the Haggle rune, which is actually we have two of them. And then when you see that, oh, you have one in the upper left corner, you have one in the bottom right corner, and then you realize that the emblem itself is one large Haggle rune.
Yes.
And it all just comes together so well that I might just like this emblem the most out of all of them. Well, maybe besides the fact that it has roses for some reason, and it makes it feel a little bit biased towards one particular member of the LDO.
Well, he's a very outspoken supporter, so I don't know,
yes.
maybe.
It just makes me wonder if it was actually colored in different colors, it would have probably be well, maybe not all 5 colors, but at least 4 of them.
4 of them, yeah.
Yeah. So I do hope we will get it in good quality soon, because I do have plans for it. And I suppose we should move on to the 5th throne and our beautiful, beautiful goddess.
Yes. Yes.
So,
yeah.
The name of her throne is the Anima Entelekia, and it's not actually the name that was mentioned in any of the games. It was only mentioned in the Masada Premium art book. I don't actually remember if we have already discussed it, but basically Anima is the Greek term for soul, and Entelekia is this idea of having innate potential for greatness. For example,
yes, what's the word for it? The realization of potential.
Yes. So, for example, when a seed is grows into a tree. This is the same idea basically. And her quote is again all too familiar. I will embrace everyone. And what exactly does it say about the throne itself?
What do you mean
The description of the throne.
Okay. The name of that god is the Twilight, the fifth god that inherited the title from the Mercury, who abdicated the throne in her favor. Her law was that of a world where all life reincarnates in a cycle of eternal transmigration. The most striking characteristic of her law was that as one experiences countless lives in the cycle of samsara, the souls of man gradually became mixed and intermingled. As a result, the discrimination of race, sex, and wealth became faded as the differences between people diluted. Over the course of many ages and incarnations, the souls of mankind would grow and mature. In addition, across all ages, the Twilight's fifth throne was the only one that allowed the coexistence of different gods.
Right, so most of it we did know already, but the most curious part of the description is the part about the spiritual intermingling, so to say. It was implied in the Masada Premium Art Book, but now we basically got a confirmation of it. And it does bring up some questions. For example, does this mean that different people become united in a single being, or is it more like over the course of many lives, people just don't really care about the race they were born into or anything like that?
I saw it like as like the idea that people mature and develop over incarnations, over different reincarnations, isn't like something that Masada made up. It's something that's actually like I'm not sure which traditions it is, but different traditions of reincarnation do actually have this aspect.
Well, if nothing else, Buddhism implies that over the course of many reincarnations, man is supposed to realize that everything is Sogyomudzo. Not sure how to translate it, but basically all is
all is transient, all is false. This world is material, so on and so forth.
And they ascend to nirvana.
Yes, it allows them to become Buddhas and be released.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's an idea that exists. Now, I think, personally, it's just that the idea is, it's as simple as it says. Mari's world, further down the line, becomes a world where there is no discrimination, where not so much people become a single being, but rather that just because you have gone through so many lives and have been so many different people, because you've been, you might be a man now, but you've been countless women in the past,
yes.
And you might have been a person of color or a person of a certain origin, shall we say?
If nothing else, we do have, I believe, some people from the original Dies cast reincarnated as Japanese in the epilogue.
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure, but I wouldn't be surprised.
It's not so much that they're Japanese, they're just, like, they're not necessarily Japanese, like we know the LDO cast weren't quite incarnated, but for example, the way you can see, like, Wilhelm being reincarnated as a slightly less toxic person, and his relationship with Helga becomes a little more normalized, where he's actually the older brother and she's the sister. That's an example of that. Like, their relationship evolved over
and we
incarnation.
also have Schreiber reincarnated as a girl.
Yes, incarnated as what he was probably either wished to become or was or wanted to become.
If nothing else, he has a happy family now, or she has.
For now, yes. White Anna. But yes, the idea is pretty much that like people develop and like Willem is a good example of that because his relationship got a little more normalized. Which I don't know. I hope to think that his that like uh, Keishiro's character owes his relationship with Sakuya to perhaps some lingering remnant of Mari's throne.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's besides the point. Um,
Mm,
now, like I said, the idea is that basically, like, it becomes basically an ideal world where there is where wars are diminished and there is no
well,
discrimination and so on.
that
So
said, it is mentioned time and time again that it does not actually get rid of conflict or suffering itself.
no, of course, because this is something that doesn't appear on the side, but like Mari knew suffering all too well. It's just
Yes,
that she
yes,
all she symbolizes is the hope that things will eventually always become better.
yes.
Uh,
So it's in the long run, everyone will be happy, even if
yes,
now, at this point, they are not.
yes. So while it doesn't get rid of conflict altogether, I do think that like some it does diminish the number of wars as there's less reason to do war because people are less inclined to hate each other.
Well, still, we did get some people who just were not content with the current state of beings, and that's why Hajun was born.
Yes. Well, there will always be people who go against even the will of the god in their universe, and it's true
Yeah, yeah.
for every throne. It's true for
Yes,
even especially for Hajun and think I don't know if God is the right word, but think
yes.
whoever possible for that. Um, yeah.
It's just worth mentioning that it is brought up that Mari's throne is not perfect. It not only has suffering and wars, but it also has room to be overthrown because she is a bit too naive. She does love everyone, even if they don't really deserve it.
That's actually it doesn't say she actually loves everyone. It says she embraces
Well,
everyone.
yes, yes,
She's
it is.
willing to. She's accepting, but she doesn't love everyone. There is a difference. We actually have a couple of gods who do love everyone, and each of their loves is rather different. But
Indeed.
Mari doesn't love everyone. She's only mentioned to love Ren. But she is accepting. I don't think that it's so much as her being naive as so much as it is her being inherently pacifistic.
I suppose so.
Like it seems more like that to me because you do see Mari at times seriously being aggressive and angry, and on top of that, even as a god, Mari is still the guillotine princess.
Yes, and
There's always a bit of lethalness to her, so I
yes,
don't know.
yes. After all, it is going to be uh, an action game of some sort, and Mari is supposed to be able to fight in some capacity. And we were told that she can still kill people in one touch. I have my own idea of how it's going to uh, uh, be a part of her entire throne, but for now, we again don't really have a lot to discuss gameplay wise.
There
Just
is one thing I've noticed in her design, which was a little curious, is that she seems to be she's holding a staff.
yes, yes, that's true. And it does not seem like it's growing out of the ground,
No, it looks like a staff. Yes,
even if her throne is the only one that actually has ground.
yes, um, yes. There's flowers surrounding her, which is is related to her dress. And once you actually zoom out and look at the panned out image of her throne, you can actually see a flower, a large lotus flower, a large blue lotus flower,
Yes.
reflecting the throne in the water. So
And we also
that's
have another lotus flower on top of
on
her.
top, right?
Uh, I have no idea what it is. It's not really a tent. Well,
Uh,
it is supposed to bring up the associations with a bridal dress, I suppose.
yes, it looks like not exactly a wedding altar, but something like that. Yes.
Yes, yes, I
And
suppose.
there's also the butterflies surrounding,
Yes, and the
which are
butterflies were not really mentioned all that much in this era, but it's pretty obvious that they symbolize the reincarnation and rebirth and metamorphosis.
yes.
And I suppose that
They or put another word, entelecheia.
and it also ties with the flower motif that Mari herself has. Besides that, we also have quite a few interesting details actually. Uh, on the top of this altar, so to say, we have the three heads of animals, which you might have seen in some CGs in Dies Irae proper. It is the heads of an ox, an eagle, and a lion. Now, it's not really brought up all too often because it honestly doesn't have a lot to do with Mari, but it's basically the motifs of cherub, and I don't mean the fat baby cherubs. I mean the actual biblical cherubs. Those are supposed to have four heads, one of a man, one of an ox, which is supposed to symbolize all the domestic animals, the head of an eagle, which symbolizes all the birds, and the head of a lion, which symbolizes the wild animals. And by putting them all together, it puts together all the realms that gods have reign over.
Yes, I believe it's called the tetramorph.
Yes, I suppose. And I also suppose that fish are kinda born from the
Mm-mm.
devil or something.
It's no. It's also has a Christian association.
I only know
The
that
four
you are
the four
allowed to eat
evangelists.
fish during fasting.
During what?
Well, during the fasting.
I don't know about that, but it also has a Christian meaning with the four evangelists. With the four evangelists each symbolizing an animal. Matthew being
Oh,
representing the man, Mark representing the lion, Luke representing the oaks, and John representing the eagle.
oh, I see. I actually didn't know it. That's nice, but still, it doesn't actually relate to Mari in any meaningful way. So, uh,
Yes, where like the meaning as to why, uh, like I assume that they took the imagery from somewhere else and just appended it to Christianity in this case.
mhm.
But yes,
Well, maybe we will have some connection to Paradise Lost because it does feel like the most Christian of the thrones so far. But besides that, I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. Besides the fact that they actually remember how she looked in this era, and by the way, she did have her cloak, and maybe it's a continuation of that. Besides that, we actually don't have that twilight itself. It does seem a bit darker than I assumed it would be. Although
Um, I don't know. You can actually kind of, if you look behind it, you can like see that there are like the water does seem to be orange at the very
yeah, yeah,
fringes there. So it's possible that like the front is actually hiding a rising sun
yeah, something like that.
or a setting sun, to be more
Yeah,
exact.
it's just that it doesn't actually resemble what we have seen of her beach, which was in the anime, in the game, and so on. Although I do like the fact that we do have the sand and the water itself.
Yes.
Although I do wonder if she's sitting in space like the rest of them, because, well, from what I understand, space doesn't actually have any water in it. And
Yeah, but it does have giant snakes and
yes,
swords and yeah, that's where suspension of disbelief goes away. Huh?
well, yes, honestly, yes. Well, actually, the fact that it's pretty dark makes me think of Hajun and how his battle with the Fifth Throne was described as him covering everything in darkness except for the singularity where Mari herself resides. So, although it's an unfortunate association, it is a valid one, I suppose.
You always gotta bring it up, don't you? You always gotta sour the mood with that.
Well, what can you do? It's not a bell you can unring, really. Okay, just to end it on a better note, it was brought out on Twitter, I suppose, that it's well, of course, it's the same with the rest of the gods, but because we have actual ground here, it does look like Mari cannot actually sit on the throne by herself, and so you have this pretty picture of Ren or Mercurius helping her sit down on this chair
Yes. Yeah.
and giving her stuff, I suppose.
Yes, I
Uh,
suppose our stuff is for that.
yes. And I suppose we can move on to another throne which never was, which is Also sprach Zarathustra. Uh, Actually, I would have preferred it to have some name which is a bit more like a place. Like we did have a description of Fran's law as Cocytus in Dies Irae, and I did see some people assuming that would be its name uh, on the grand scheme of things, uh, because we did get the kanji name in Kajirika Muikagura, but never really had the Romaji name for it. But either way, it's named Eilosprach Zarathustra. Its Japanese name is Mugen Setsuna Daiguren Jigoku, which is translated something like the incessant crimson, grand crimson hell of the moment, or maybe Momentos Grand Crimson Hell because it's now put somewhere in the middle of its name. And
Yeah.
of course, the quote is the usual.
As always.
Yes, because, well, it's Ren. He's not that big on originality, really. So, halt all time for thou
Thou art so fair.
art so fair. Yes. The and I suppose we can go for the description now.
The name of that god is the Moment, an artificial light form created by the Mercury to facilitate the growth of the twilight as a god. He later shattered the shackles of his born purpose and awakened as a god, but realizing that his law would only plunge the cosmos into eternal status for the stopping of all time, he deemed himself unworthy of godhood and yielded the throne to the Twilight. As such, he serves as their guardian and the shield of the Fifth Throne.
Yes. So again, it's not really anything new here. Well, besides the fact that he actually got himself some sort of throne. I did actually expect him to sit near Mari in her throne. Like,
Yes.
because of their deep connection, they would have like something like double seat. We could have had the same scene as on the LDO tapestry with both Ren and Mari. But no, we actually have a completely different artwork for him. Uh, Originally, when it was revealed, Ren actually had a different facial expression, or at least it was uh, uh, it seemed that way because of the stream
Yeah.
quality, maybe.
Yeah.
But either way, people assumed that the Ren is smiling on his throne, despite the fact that he never actually wished to have a throne for himself, and his eyes seemed kinda dead, which did put it all together in some neat package. But in the end, he is kind of frowning, so it does make sense for him to be this guardian figure for Mari. Um, uh, as there is little to discuss about his law, I suppose we can discuss the design, which bears a lot of has a lot in common with what we have seen in the Mitsudomoe ending. So, in Mitsudomoe ending, we have Ren ascending to godhood and discarding the shackles of his karma, so to say, and he realizes his own law, and we have this great image of a giant clock with no hands. And this is basically a development of the same idea, except that I believe the throne itself kind of works like the two hands sitting together.
Yeah.
And I assume, despite the fact that we have all these many gears hovering in midair, they don't actually move, which
Probably not.
yes, which would make for quite confusing visuals when it actually gets added in the game itself. Because we do have like unlimited blade works, we have this entire idea of the clock used to show the passage of time, and here it is supposed to show the the complete opposite. Well, maybe it will move to some extent, because some people still believe that flags on the ships go the different direction, and people have to actually fix it in video games, and maybe we will see something like that here. Well, either way, well, it does not actually have a lot to discuss here, really. I would have preferred if it had some scenes from Ren's past on this. It does have some mm, spots where you could put some CGs or something like that. And I did actually assume that it actually has some pictures, but no, it's just a random pattern of metal.
Wait. Do you remember the ending cinematic for, like the ending theme for Dies Irae, like the visual? Everyone had faces in cogs.
Yes, actually.
So yes, that's an
Oh,
interesting point. Another point that's like interesting is that between all the cogs, if you look at like the zoom in on Ren, there's actually a little pentagram like thing to his left. And
yes, although I'm not sure that actually matters a lot.
I mean, it's the one. It's like the one symbol that I can like
Yes.
appoint which meaning to. So
Well,
I'm clinging to that,
well, I
except
mean,
for like the overall image of the clock.
yes. Although
There's
we do
also
have an actual symbol for Ren, which is again revealed for the first time on the official website and was not present in the Masada premium art book. Well, no, it really does not have a lot to discuss either because, well, the Lotus motif is to be expected, really. We also have what seems like guillotine blades on the sides, and mm, actually it does have a small interesting detail at the very bottom. It is a strange repeating pattern which, if you move your eyes to the side, is also on Ren's chest. And it didn't really take me that long to understand that it's basically the perfect symbol of Ren's law. Is that if you have a repeating pattern, it's natural parallel with Ren's idea of the perfect world, where the same day just repeats over and over again.
yeah.
Not even the same day, the same moment lasts forever. Okay, so
We also forgot to mention Mari's emblem, but there isn't a lot to say because it's just Mari.
yes, and it has her scar, which is kinda in a spiral-like pattern uh, around her. It's
Yeah.
really not mm, visible because, well, most of it is just
Yeah,
her
but it
head.
looks like, but it does look like the decapitation scar.
Yes. And I do believe we have already discussed it in the first episode, but it was quite a while ago, so it's worth repeating.
Yes.
And and I suppose Ren also wears heels because that's just how everyone rolls.
Yep.
Like we have everyone in LDO wearing high heels just because. Well, good thing he doesn't actually have to go anywhere
Yes.
for now.
For the
And
time being, yes.
yes, and that means we move on to the last and the worst throne for today.
And yet somehow he is fairly popular.
Yes. Well, actually, when his throne was revealed, well, first of all, I did tell you it's going to be the most cursed image of them all. And it is. It really is.
Yes.
But it's just. Uh, we will discuss the design itself in general a bit later, but it's just so perfect. Like, it couldn't get any better than Hajin's throne being a giant fucking baby. Because that's exactly what Hajun is. He's a giant fucking baby. Like, people still have some trouble translating Hajun's name because it's a very culturally charged term. You have all the different variants of it. You have Mari, you have Papias, but now we just got the perfect translation for it. Like, you can have Hajun Furi, giant fucking baby now. Don't thank me, Steiner. So,
He
uh,
won't.
so speaking of untranslatable names, the name of Hajun's throne is Hajun Dai Yokukai Tengu Do, which is something along the lines of uh, the Hajun realm of the Tengu of the Great Desire realm. And the Ruby text is much easier to explain. It's Mahamara. It's taken directly from the Indian language, where Maha is great and Mara is, well, basically the devil. So, as I said, giant fucking baby.
There's also another meaning for Mara, but we'll leave that out.
Yes. You probably know it already.
If you played SMT, you sure do.
Yes, even if you didn't really. If you ever been to the internet, and chances are you are, if you're listening to us.
You probably know what Mara is, even if you don't know what Mara is.
Yes. Not to be confused with Mari.
Yes, and
Not to be confused with Sohaya Maru.
Yes, and speaking of more untranslatable things,
yes,
there's the
Hajun's quote.
Quote, yes, which is Metsujin Meso. I wish to be all I wish is to be alone. Now,
alright, so I hope you did prepare for this, because I kinda didn't. On the other hand, I kinda did.
Yeah, same. Metsujin Meso is like Hajun's catchphrase. It pretty much means something along the line of complete, utter, total, universal annihilation.
Yes.
Something along the lines of that.
The main problem about this phrase is that it's so short, but it still fits so much meaning inside.
Yes, yes, it does. Basically, it means like extravagant, exaggerated, grand, universal destruction, annihilation, extinction.
So far, I have translated it along the lines of apotheosis of genocide.
That's not bad.
But
now,
it's still not quite the same.
Yeah, it's not as catchy as Messaging Meso. And you know, one part that I kind of feel important to accentuate with Hajun and Messaging Meso is that Hajun is basically like an anti-Buddha. And Buddhism and Buddhas have this very specific sense of scale. Like, the Buddha is supposedly as great as the entirety of the multiverse in Buddhism. You know how you see the mandalas with the Buddha standing in the middle? If you look up a mandala in Google, then that's supposedly the entirety of the multiverse. That's like a map of the multiverse in Buddhism. So it's important to express that sense of scale in terms of everything that Hajun does. Now, it's
the entire story, the entire setting of Kajiri Kamui Kagura borrows a lot from Buddhism, not only in just random terms, but also in the scale, in the sense of cosmology, and in part even the overall system of the throne itself, because it was mostly developed in Kajiri Kamui Kagura. It borrows a lot from Buddhism.
Right, and like the whole sense of scale is actually inverted in Hajun's case, because his throne actually makes the universe shrink in a way, which is an interesting prospect, because all he ever wishes is, because in a way he only sees the universe as himself.
So you also have this opposition between the entirety of the multiverse with all of its inhabitants and a single small puny being.
Yes, in a way.
And they are actually have equal merit in Hajun's eyes.
Uh,
Well,
I'd even say that he himself. I'd
yes,
say it's the
yes.
other way around. He himself, well, he's the only one with any kind of merit, and the rest of it is nothing.
I suppose it's
Hajun also sees the entirety of Tengudo, as is fitting, as his body, and everyone that inhabits the universe are like some kind of virus or some kind of filth
yes.
that clings to his limbs, and he just wants to be clean. He wants to be purified. All he wants is silence.
All he wants is
And it's
peace, really.
peace, really. And it's an interesting thing because Hajun actually doesn't see himself as having been properly born yet. As far as he's concerned, he will only be born once everyone and everything are gone. Basically, a lot of what made Hajun what he is because there's actually another soul inside his body, and that soul forced the concept of someone else onto his presence,
Well,
to
that's
his
not to mention that
consciousness.
he was born within a different throne, and so he was always cons-
No, that you can like claim that all of that connects together, but
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
end, there is an actual confrontation between him and the other soul inside him, where he says, "This is all because of you. If you weren't there, I would have never noticed there are other people." As if to say that if he was born properly, if he wasn't born with someone else clinging to him, he would have just spent his life in constantly comatose until he died.
Yes,
Which is an interesting prospect. Now, and this all connects to the baby, who is still, you can see, he's still biting into the umbilical cord.
yes, indeed.
Like, the reason he is a baby is because he still doesn't see himself as being born. He actually says, once I kill you, I will finally cry my first cry. I will finally be born. I will finally actually live for the first time. So the whole babiness thing isn't just, mocking him and saying that he's childish and that his perspective is terrible and
Well,
childish.
I mean, it
But
is mentioned that his self egotism is even greater than that of a newborn because he just does not care about anyone but himself.
even a newborn recognizes his mother. But
Yes,
that's besides the point. The point is, the whole baby thing isn't just there to kind of mock Hajun. It's there. There is actually a lot of symbolism and a lot of how he perceives himself.
yes, yes.
Uh,
So that's actually why I do love this entire concept a lot, despite Hajun himself being just the worst.
yes, he's divorced of pretty much everything, but yeah,
He's
it's
fascinating, really.
yes, he is. And something, I kind of looked back at that final confrontation between him and the other soul inside him, and he does actually bring up a pretty good point when he says that there's nothing inherently wrong with cherishing yourself. Everybody kind of this is something that exists in everyone, and he's right. Everybody has some level of sense worth because otherwise you wouldn't be yourself.
And that's not to mention that he actually fought a lot of different gods, which did exactly the same as he did. They extrapolated their sense of worth over the entire world, and so
Yes,
he did not really consider to be any worse than them, and he did
yes.
consider them to be huge hypocrites.
Well, he considers the whole concept of listening to someone else as a sort of madness. Like it's actually his conversation in the final scenes of Kateri is actually kind of is interesting because he does come off as a convincingly good villain despite being almost not being a character in a way.
Well, he
He's
only
a
had like 2 to 3 different scenes where he actually had to talk.
well, yes, but it's more like he's so much of a concept that it's hard to
See him as
appoint
a
any more.
person.
Yeah, kind of appoint any more depth to him, but there's certainly depth there because he does basically say, like, why do you have to live with other people? Why do you necessarily need to have other people influence you? They're other people after all. They have their own They have their own desires. It's crazy that you need this to live, and he's, looking at it from another perspective, he's not entirely wrong because interacting with other people is hard, and so on and so forth.
Yes, and you have
So
the whole hedgehog dilemma from Evangelion and stuff like that. And that we will
yes,
all be happy when we will be Tang.
yes. But yes, there's also the whole idea of the baby, because of the embryo, to be more, because you can still see the umbilical cord is connected there,
Yes.
because of the womb, which, womb is solitude. There is someone, there is a mother, but otherwise solitude. And it's actually an interesting concept because they're one of Hajun's more, shall we say, iconic images is him just sitting there covering his eyes. And you can kind of it's an interesting image. Imagine him just sitting in the womb and there's someone talking to him from the other side
Yes.
of the room, and he's just, leave me alone. I just want peace. Let me sleep. So yes, Hajun is interesting in his own way, but Hajun is also very popular because people got it into their heads that he's like the strongest character in anything ever. So
And also that he's our guy. Or
yeah,
anyone's guy, really.
yeah, 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 because Mari was a mistake. Her throne was bad. So thank Hajun for that makes perfect sense. Yeah, thanks
Anyway,
for that.
so I suppose we can discuss his design after we talk about his description.
Right.
Luckily, we did somehow explain the concept of messaging missile, which already
Somehow.
makes this episode worthwhile.
Yeah.
Episode 8, where we explain messaging missile once and for all.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I'm sure Steiner will come up with some convincing
Yes.
translation for it
And we
soon.
will talk about it again and again in the future.
If there's a choice. So yes, the name of that god is Hajun, the god of the sixth throne, who defeated the Twilight and stole away the throne from her. His law was that of a world where all lives kill one another until only one remains. Bearing extreme maddened egotism, he believed himself to be the only existence that bears any kind of meaning in the entirety of creation, and decreed that everyone other than him are to die. His was the single most terrible law in the history of the throne. Now, this is kind of interesting because people saw the first part of it and assumed that this is so Hachud is like the god of battle royales, which is kind of true and kind of not. The scene where you actually see Hajun's throne being completed is actually pretty nightmarish.
Yes.
You see literally every living being basically trying to kill every other living being they come across, and that applies even to animals. And you see animals basically starting to slaughter each other, and people slaughter.
It's really worth mentioning that what you have said, the thing about believing himself to be the only existence that bears any kind of meaning, is not only applicable to Hajun himself, but
It's
to
applicable
every
to
single
everyone else.
inhabitant
Yes.
of his throne.
Yeah, basically his what we just described earlier about him wanting to be alone and him not recognizing anyone else is basically applies to every living creature, and they start killing each other. Now it's another interesting point about Hajun, and really Hajun is all sorts of fascinating, is that Hajun kind of has this moment, he can be extremely he's almost bipolar in a way. He can become very sober and recognize people that he met, and then all of a sudden he forgets who they are, and is like, "Oh, who were you again? Well, whatever. I guess I'll just kill you." It's really.
And sometimes he can kill people. Sometimes he's afraid of people.
Yes, yes, you can see him. It's interesting. Where there's a part where he basically like talks to someone and is very hateful, and then all of a sudden he starts shrinking in fear and screaming and telling, "Leave me alone! Don't touch me." He's a character, right? He's
Yes.
interesting. Um,
Right. So besides that, I suppose we should talk about his design before we talk about his character. Well, actually, his design remained exactly the same as in Kajiri
yes,
Kamikagura, which makes sense because, he's still drawn by G. Yusuke, and uh, there is something about Hajun that uh, makes him what he is because he does not change at all. Like he refuses any change,
in
and
a way.
that still doesn't explain why he has 6 arms only when visual, but he
Well,
doesn't have them here, so
the same can be said for Satanael, though.
yes.
His
And we
wings.
also have Ren and his guillotine, so we'll see, I guess.
Well, I guess that this is like their non-combat attire.
Yeah, and the throne itself, as with Sataniel, does have 6 arms, so I suppose it's kind of like putting the entire throne on like equipment of sorts
Yeah.
or something like that. Alright, so the design of the throne itself, we did already mention a lot about it being. It does seem like it's in a literal womb, really, because you have this red bubble, and you have something along.
Yeah, like
Like
it looks like blood
yes,
vessels.
like blood vessels, and within this womb, we actually can see the mandala, which, as you have already mentioned, is basically the map of the universe, which was also used and mentioned multiple times in Kajiri Kamui Kagura. So, despite the fact that some people expected it to look exactly the same as in Kajiri Kamui Kagura, it kinda doesn't, but still kinda
Kind
does.
of does, yeah.
Yes.
The baby also, the baby does actually have multiple arms.
Yes, yes, he has 6 arms, and 2 of them kind of support Hajun, which
Yes,
serves as the closest he can use as a throne, I suppose.
yes,
Well, really, again, it all comes down back to the fact that his throne is the most personal, so to say. His throne is the most organic.
yeah,
Even despite the fact that all the gods are basically feed the entire universe within themselves, it never really goes to the same extent as Hajun's throne does, because no one out of them has uh, the same sense of self-worth, and imposing oneself onto others. Even Mercurius doesn't actually believe that everyone should be him. He just wants to be uh, this great scenario writer or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, and like we said earlier, like Hadron actually senses Tengudo and everyone that lives in his rule as like
Yes.
his body and like things that cling to his body. So
Yes.
yeah,
And I suppose that explains the swollen head of the baby. Like on one side, it does connect to the other soul that you mentioned that actually lives within Hajun, and he wishes it was never there. But on the other hand, it also connects to all the different souls within the throne, which he does not actually want. Like,
Well, there's that, and also the fact that babies generally have big heads.
yeah,
That's the
but not
first
to
part
the
that
same
develops.
extent, really.
Well, like the sense of scale is obviously skewed, but the head is the first part that develops. But yes, there is the
And it certainly does not
ominous.
have ominous runes on it.
Yeah, the ominous runes are
Yeah.
actually are very striking, and I don't know. Can you read them? I don't personally.
I personally don't. There were a lot of different runes in Kajiri Kamui Kagura which kinda seem like kanji, but
Aren't.
probably aren't. Like, I never really tried to translate them, but simply because I assume they just don't mean anything.
There's also one in his stomach, but you can't see it because of the umbilical cord.
Yes. Well, still, it's Masada, so I suppose they do mean something. It's
Yeah,
just that we are
too
not on the
ignorant
same
to
level.
know.
Yes.
Too ignorant to know. There also seem to be sprouting blue flames,
Yes.
purple flames, both from his head and from his arms. And then there's the eye, which is actually a little interesting because the baby's normal eyes are purple, while the iconic third eye is actually it's rimmed with gold, and there's something like a red iris in there, but it looks like something is suspended inside. And it's actually interesting because Hadrian's actual eyes are his third eye is actually just a bigger version of his other eyes.
Yes. Yes.
Like his pupils are white and the irises are black, which is true of all three of his eyes. Well, for the baby, it's actually different. The
Yes.
baby's irises are white and the eye itself is red.
Yes.
It's a little odd. It's a little unusual. I guess it's there to accentuate the third eye, which is a
Yeah, maybe.
symbol.
Then again, most of the fronts so far have some sort of light in the center, so maybe it has some greater meaning, like a
Well,
connection to Naraka or something like that.
this throne also has a light in the middle. You just
Yeah, yeah,
can't see it. The baby is in front of it.
yes.
Much like Mari's throne, probably blocking the sunset.
Yeah, yeah. Beside that, the baby also has long earlobes, which is basically the same symbol as with Buddha, because he was he had a noble origin, and because of his noble origin, he wore a lot of jewelry on his ears, and so his earlobes got longer, and since then it started to symbolize his uh, mm,
It became a symbol of the Buddha.
yes, and his willingness to listen and hear everyone please towards him.
And
And in
Hadrian, and
Hadrian's case, it just flipped on
it's
its head, I suppose.
yeah, it symbolizes his being the anti-Buddha.
Yes, basically.
There is Masada does have a thing with making villainous characters appear like something as a means of mocking it. Like, for example, if in the Senshinkan series, if you know Shino's character, Shino is dressed
A priest.
like a priest, but Shino is actually kind of like a devil character, and
Mm-hmm.
he basically encapsulates in my interpretation encapsulates every aspect of the devil like across different religions, in my opinion. So
Mm-hmm.
he has a Mephistopheles kind of thing where he seduces people into unfavorable deals. He has he's actually he has he's actually made out of flies and insects, which is the Beelzebub
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. He's described as being made of excerpment and feces and semen and body fluids, which is the symbol of taint in Eastern religion, so on and so forth.
As in
But
Hadrian's case.
yes, this is Arjun's case, yes. But the reason I said all this is there you will almost never find Shino without a very mocking grin on his face, because he basically mocks everyone and he mocks everything. And he mocks even the concept of religion, and he mocks the concept of the devil, and he mocks pretty much everything. So in my opinion, it kind of applies to Hajin as well here. By taking on the appearance of a Buddha, he actually mocks it, because he's everything but. He's the polar opposite of a Buddha. If the Buddha represents everything, the entirety of the cosmos, then Hajun represents the polar opposite. A microcosm, someone who is just himself.
Yes. Although that does bring up the question of who exactly is Buddha in the front terms. I suppose it's Mari, but she hardly has the same sort of symbols to her.
No, I don't know if it's Mari. I think like the whole process. I think like Masada tried to take the whole like process, the theological process of emanation, and just appointed to it a similar meaning as the Buddha, because the Buddha does have the whole expanding consciousness sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily mean there is a Buddha in front terms. It just means that Hajun takes the idea and flips it on its head and represents the opposite of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose that's all we have to talk about Hajun, because we can talk about him forever. But we should move on, because we still have a lot to discuss, and
Times have taken.
Have an hour and a half on our belt stack. Besides the update of the website itself, we also have some tweets from Masada, who not only covered the aforementioned update with some small comments about every god, he has Reinhardt and calls him, even though he wants to cover it up with his good looks and good voice, he's actually a huge yandere character. And
which is fitting.
Yes, he said that Mari is the most kind one, but does not forgive.
Unforgiving when it comes to cheating.
Yes, because yes, he has ran, and he still can't escape his hardships.
Yes, he always suffers, and it's like Hajun Masada has this thing where he's extremely Masada likes seeing his characters suffer, which I'm sure you could surmise if you've read any of his works. But I remember
not to the same extent as Urobuchi, but
yes. Now, he's not the butcher, but still, he likes seeing them suffer. And I remember, in the big Pantheon stream last year, they basically they had Yu and Yan read the synopsis, and it ended with something along the lines of, "Will Ren be able to regain his normal life?" And Masada's like, "Nope."
Spoilers.
Yes, and then yes, you again yelled at him to stop spoiling the game. But he kind of likes seeing Ren suffer, but Ren kind of ended up becoming, I don't know, kind of worldly wise for it. Yes. He's seen some shit. Yes. So
do you know who else has seen some shit?
Way to segue into that one.
So he describes Hajun as the Shatin who has a hobby of feeding people some shit.
Of degrading people to scatology, yes. Yeah, one of it's kind of an in-joke which you might not know if you haven't played Kajuri Kamikagura, but one of Hajun's most memorable quotes was he goes to a character and asks her, "Say, did my shit taste good?" Because he kind of there's some circumstances to it, but a character kind of did end up feeding off of his excitement in a way, very metaphorically speaking.
Yes.
But yes, it's a very iconic quote of his. So Masada
And again, we
said,
have the whole association of Hajun with filth in general.
yes,
And then Masada actually posted a few extra tweets just to make us happy. The
yes,
first one was posted on the same day as the website update. He just goes along and describes how each of the gods kind of feels about the rest of them. So it goes like the truth
likes
likes
everyone.
everyone, loves everyone even.
Yes,
The remorseless loves the morning star, and the truth should die. The morning star, everyone is such an idiot. The Mercury uh, loves the twilight, loves
loves
the
the
gold.
gold.
Hajun
Hajj
should die.
should die.
Uh, the gold, of course, loves everyone. The twilight loves the moment. The moment loves the twilight. Hajun should die. And Hajun does not even take anyone
Acknowl-
into account.
yeah, doesn't even acknowledge other people exist.
So most of it is kind of expected, although, of course, because we
Yes,
don't know a lot about the truth and the remorseless, their opinions were kind of surprising because, uh, well, uh, well, I suppose,
in the truth's case, everybody was surprised that she was actually put on the same pedestal as Reinhard.
yes,
But
basically,
the biggest surprise was actually Muzan because him liking the Morning Star is a little odd considering the Morning Star is the one who dethroned him.
then again, the
Um,
original purpose of the remorseless's law was to help his own people, was to actually defeat evil once and for all. And the Morning Star kinda did just that.
yeah, so yeah, it's probably kind of something along the lines of that, like that he saw the Morning Star's brand of good as much better than Shinga's flippant good.
Yes.
There's also the other possible explanation that Muzan doesn't want to be on the throne, and that's why you see him apparently
Yes,
with the
yes.
swords pointing on him. So maybe he was actually grateful for being
Yes.
released from his duty and allowed
We did
to.
have some ideas like that in a few of uh, previous episodes, so
So yes,
it might be
so
just that.
yep, it's entirely possible.
Oh, it's not like two of these theories contradict each other, really. Uh,
Hmm.
Both of them might be true,
Yeah.
so. Uh, but, anyway, so Masada didn't consider that to be enough, and that's why he posted more.
The
He
following
posted,
day.
yes, he posted two screenshots from the Switch version of the game, of the scenario which is supposed to connect to Pantheon. And here we see uh, familiar faces, really, uh, all of them, although
Yes.
one of them is a bit less familiar than the others.
Yes.
Anyways, so well, we will post the links in the video's description, of course, but basically it's a screenshot of Sakura and Tsukuyomi and certain Masurao in the
Yes.
background.
Yes. And that was exciting because our boy
It
Habaki
was.
is back. Habaki is back. Yes.
And he's looking
Like
good.
he's looking good. Yes. Like Masada did say before that the members of Amaterasu would serve as mentor roles to the main character, but we
Yes, and
haven't seen
so,
or heard of them for quite a while. Actually, ever since the Pantheon site got updated like 2 months ago. The only ones we saw were Tsukiyomi and Sakura, which was where's everyone
Yeah,
else?
they're completely
Well,
different. They're completely new faces.
yes. So now we actually have Abaki, and Abaki looks, he looks like himself, but he also has a brand new outfit. He has white cloak. He looks a little more armored, a little more regal. He also has this really cool gauntlet.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
kind of curious that everyone expected the Amaterasu to have the same uniform, but his actually looks pretty different.
yes. The screenshot also, in a related but not entirely directly related way, kind of ended up um, bringing everyone's attention to a certain aspect of the uniform that's a little odd and a little more noticeable in Tsukuyomi, which is
Yes.
the way that it's unbuttoned in a way that exposes one breast. Now, with Sakura, you can't really tell because she's a Patanko, but um, with Tsukuyomi, you have like one boob poking out, and it's kind of really odd, and people have been
Well, I
poking fun
suppose now we
at
know who to thank for it.
yes. Another point is that, you can see that like Tsukuyomi is embarrassed, and Sakura has a very um, exasperated expression on her face, to say the least. And basically, people were like, "What did Habaki do to her to get to Tsukuyomi to get to get that
Flustered.
uh, expression out of Sakura? And what did he molest her? Did he sekuhara her?" And Masada later tweeted that he died laughing when people got it right just off the screenshot,
Yes, just immediately.
because Habaki is kind of he's a skirt chaser.
Yes.
So yeah, he's a skirt chaser, and he basically thinks a lot about sex. So yes.
About Nuki Nuki Pon, you mean?
Nuki Nuki Pon, yes. And another point that people have noticed, and I also have noticed, is that the background is actually very, very Japanese in appearance. Like, it looks like a Japanese town. It looks like actually something you would see in Kajiri Kamui Kagura itself. It looks like Shinshu.
Well, I
So
suppose it makes sense because the throne is created by the inhabitants of Shinshu, and so if they had to make something their home, it would make sense for it to look like something they were
yeah, but that
born and
brings up.
raised in.
Yes, but that brings all sorts of questions because, well, for example, how are they talking right now? Is this some kind of space? Does every god have a space that corresponds to their original throne, or what? Because we do know that the world under Amaterasu is actually the modern world. It's
Yes, yes,
it's fashioned after Mari's throne,
that's true.
and you basically do see the characters eventually in modern attire because the world has arrived in modern times. It's actually a little odd because over the course of the game, you can see that Sakura is writing letters to someone, and by the end of it, we find out that someone is actually Kasumi, which implies that the events of Kajiri Kamui Kagura, of the epilogue for Kajiri Kamui Kagura, Akebono no Ikari, actually happens a generation or two after, as if it's like the difference between Mari's ending and Mari's epilogue.
Yeah, yeah, so not a lot of time has passed.
Yes, some time has passed, a few decades, but not not cosmic eras worth of
And it
time.
makes sense when you think about Hajun's throne because, uh, well, uh, in Tengudo, people aren't really that happy to help each other, and so
Yeah. So
uh,
society doesn't develop as quickly.
yes,
Yeah.
although the historical period is about the times when uh, Japan was. Uh,
Preparing to open the device, it was somewhere around the end of the 18th, beginning of the 19th century.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, it not a lot of time has passed, but not an entire epoch, so to say.
Yes. So it's a little curious. It's also interesting because Masada did say that the story will trace every era in the Throne's history. So it's like, is it maybe like singularities in
Yeah, yeah.
FGO?
We will most probably travel across all
Like,
the fronts, and we will fight like Reinhardt. We will fight. Uh,
yeah.
I don't know,
Well, we
remorseless
don't.
and so
Yeah,
on and so forth.
we don't know that much, but we do.
Exactly.
But he did say something along that the line, so we can speculate that there might be something along the lines of like the singularities in Go, where you like end up like going into, I don't know, maybe kind of either time traveling or kind of tracing
Yeah,
back the
yeah, something like that.
events or something to that extent. But it's just an interesting tidbit that the background is actually like modeled after Shinshu, especially since the other screenshots are really odd. Like you see the cat girl in the side screenshot is traveling through space in a way, so it's like, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yes, that's very, that's an interesting thing to mull over. But yes, Masa didn't have a lot to say. Just said that there's a nostalgic face
Yes.
in this
And
screenshot.
it is worth mentioning that Habaki is actually drawn by a different artist, I believe.
It's speculated that he's drawn by someone else. Yes, it
Yes.
does look like Unagi, which is another one of Light's designers, who did the work for the Silverio series and as well among others. But it's possible that he did collaborate because Unagi and Jiusuke are friends. They like to
Yeah, yeah.
draw fan arts of each other. Like some of Jiusuke's art books actually have illustrations by Unagi. And Unagi, and we're not complaining. Unagi is also a very talented artist and is very good at capturing the chuny nature of light
And
works.
I do believe it was mentioned a while ago that he was going to draw Kajirikamo Kagura characters or Paradise Lost characters. I'm not sure.
Well,
Yeah, yeah.
either way, great. But yeah, very cute image. People were excited both because of the expressions. People have noted, and I have noted as well, and this also gets addressed in the questions later on that Sakura's faces reminds me of Rinko from the Senshinkan series. Rinko is very famous for having Kauge, of having all sorts of unique faces. Like you can see her having like Dio's face and
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
sorts of other horror-inducing expressions. So, people were caught off guard by Sakura's expression. It's very much like that, albeit not as scary. And Sakura is, of course, not much cuter. But yes. Next image is more of a screenshot of the visual novel itself, and you can see Tsukuyomi basically apologizing to Habaki, to Rindo, to Shiori, to Risui, to basically the cast of to most of the cast of Kajiri Kamui Kagura, and she basically says that she's like ashamed of herself. And we already know this Tsuji, we've already seen from the set, but this has a couple of points of interest. The first one is that this confirms that the other six gods, the other five gods, are going to be present in some way, shape, or form. They are still
Well,
around. We knew this,
of
but
course,
this
yes.
confirms it. Another point that's like interesting is this is actually using Ikabe's engine, which I can notice because the text box actually has the character's face
Yes, yes.
in it, which is a feature that's only out of Masada works. It's only true of Ikabe. Like the Senshinkan series doesn't have that yet. I'm guessing this is like a newer version of the Malia engine.
And it
But
also conveniently hides her name from us.
well, her name doesn't appear period here, but
Yes,
that's the
yes.
point.
But
Uh,
if it was an older
Yeah, yes,
version,
there was. Yeah, there's no text box. No, I guess they don't have to have the name, but that's besides the point.
yeah.
The point is, this is actually interesting because this might mean that the entirety of the Switch version will be in that engine, which
That would
is
make sense, really.
is actually, well, it's not a huge deal, but it is kind of a graphical UI update that is exclusive as of now to the Switch version. This is the only version of Amantis Amantis that would have this engine because even the HD release that we got in the English version and later came out in Japanese
Yes.
doesn't have that.
Yes.
So that's interesting.
From what I believe, it was developed before Ikabe, and they kind of used it from the Android and the iOS
Yeah,
version
yeah, they lifted it. Yeah, they lifted it off
just to
the
save
end.
some time.
Yeah, which is I guess it's okay because DS in general always was a little
Dated.
scarce, not dated, but a little scarce
Yeah.
on its graphical pyrotechnics, shall we
Yeah,
say?
yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
it's a
I mean, it is 10 years old by now.
yes, but the engine is cool. I like it. It's also the engine also had all sorts of really cool bits to it. At least in Ikabe, like it had a glossary with all sorts of information on related terms like on an herbe for knowledge, so on and so forth. So something like that could appear in the new version. They might go the extra mile and add like a glossary that gets updated as it goes, which is really cool. Fate Stay Night had that, and that was really cool. It added to the
Mm-hmm.
whole RPG kind of feel of it all. So they might add that. I don't know. Maybe they won't. But either way, this is a very interesting little addition. And you have to. It's like something else that I caught onto this image, except for the obvious things.
Yeah, yeah. Right, so I suppose that's about it. That's all we have to talk about in terms of news for today. But we do have a few questions to answer, and along the way we might also discuss some other stuff. So, the first question comes from Nanaya, and he or she asks, how did Trifa get killed by Wolfgang
Uh,
Schreiber?
do you ever worry how did Triffa kill Wolfgang in Case Root?
Yeah, yeah. In case root, what are your expectations for Pantheon's gameplay?
How did Triffa kill Wolfgang in Case Root? He basically snuck up on him.
Yes.
He snuck up on him, and it happened also. Basically, he got killed. He killed Schreiber the same way he was actually killed in Kasumi's route. Basically, he caught Schreiber mid transformation.
Yes.
Schreiber was about to go berserk after Shiro touched him, and he just swooped in and killed him. And we know why he killed him. He killed him to get in the way of the transmutation of the gold by removing one of the parts of the Pentachroma.
Yes.
But yeah, that's basically how he did it. Expectations for Pantheon gameplay? Wow, that's a big one.
Well, I suppose I can say right now that I want Pantheon to be made in such a way that you would be inclined to combine different characters from different games, because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
clearly the most fun part of it.
yeah.
Like, that's why you are going to play it, just to see all these characters interact with each other.
Yeah, we've already mentioned this before, but making like a whole angel team and
Yeah, for example.
adding like Claudia in there because Claudia has an angel theme to her. You might have if you've seen Earth's Pride that was in the stream way back then, if it's still even relevant. She actually has a Bria called Metatron,
Yes.
so there's the angel thing right there. You can make an entire I don't know, an entire brother team with Kai and Wilhelm and Sojiro and maybe even No if he's going to be relevant and so on and so forth.
Well, it's
Um,
just that in some social games you have these characters who are connected to each other story-wise, but gameplay-wise they don't really mesh well together. Like
yeah,
in Grand Blue Fantasy, for example, you have the so-called organization, which has people using magical weapons. But unfortunately, most of them are thrown around different elements, and the game is built in such a way that you want to make teams of a single element. And basically, that's what I would like to avoid in Pantheon, to avoid this idea of making teams from the same throne.
Yeah.
Because we have already
So
had
there's
enough
that.
interactions.
Of course, I expect the game to let me kill Hajun with Shpine. That is, of course,
Yes.
something that we all expect. That's something we all want. Um, and yeah, well, I want lots of resaltas. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
I did write an entire post about my expectation on the game, so you can just check it out on my blog. I don't know.
yeah.
Alright, so the next question is from Shrado Shkoten. He actually posted two tweets, one before and one after the update. Now that we have all the Shadow Gods besides Amaterasu, what do you think their next update will be? Well, they are going to reveal Amaterasu, of course.
Probably yes.
They are likely to reveal the new developer.
Yeah, and well, in the future they will have to bring up some screenshots.
Yes, they did mention that the Switch version will bring some gameplay footage. Although now I'm not sure
No,
it's
I'm
going to
not.
be there.
No, I'm not sure that's what they said. They did say there might be a demo. That it's not necessarily. It's just that people might have assumed that the like they mentioned a release date, and it was unclear if that release date is for the demo or for the
Yeah,
Switch.
yeah, basically.
It not necessarily. That doesn't necessarily mean that it will come with it, but they're gonna have to reveal like a character page, like aside from the world page, because the world page is one
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
like a character page.
It's pretty easy to fill it with all the DS characters,
Yeah,
which we
it's
have seen already.
just go into like any other
DS Irae
social gay
website.
site,
Ah,
no social gay website,
ah,
and see what they have there,
yeah.
and it should be something like that. Okay,
Yeah, basically that's about it. Um, Again, it might take them a few months before the game is released, but basically uh, it doesn't really take that many updates before the game itself is actually released.
yeah.
Like you get all the new characters, you have a single page about the gameplay mechanics, and maybe some wallpapers, which would be cool, really.
And maybe even a music page. I don't know.
Yes. Alright, his next questions. Or her again. What, what, what are
What
your
are
thoughts on Tsukuyomi feeling miserable about herself?
uh
Well,
it could be
it's
could
tough to
be
tell,
anything.
really. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be anything really.
I don't
Um,
believe she's going to betray them or anything like that.
no, no, of course not.
The most
She's
I expect from her is just leaving them behind and going on some
I don't even think it's that.
adventures.
Like the way she talks to them is actually really respectful, and it's like
Yes.
it's not just so much. It's not so much she's feeling miserable about herself, so much as it seems like she's disappointed in herself, which kind of connects to them being like, in my opinion, maybe them being like her mentor figures. So maybe she like failed in some task. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Maybe.
But I don't think it's so much her feeling miserable about herself so much as her being disappointed with herself for whatever reason.
Yeah. Right. So, how excited are you all about the return of the Eastern Expedition?
Very.
Very. Uh, I can't wait to see Shiori and Yako and
I
Ryusu on.
yes we want to see their new sprites if possible. If there is like just looking at how cool Habaki looks right now really makes me want to see like Rendo's new getup because Rendo already has like this cool armor. So like how do you top that? And you have Yusui who
Unfortunately,
is
I
like
don't
oh
believe they are going to be in the Switch version because,
yeah.
again, it all goes back to the voice cast, and Habaki's voice actor is mentioned there because he is also voicing Hajun. The same, unfortunately, can be said about the rest of the Kajiri Kamui Kagura cast. So, uh, I suppose we will have to wait until later. Although they can show them just without any voiced lines.
Okay. Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah. How do you all picture their clothing? Well, I suppose it will be, after all, some variations of this
Their original
uniform.
outfit. No, actually, of their original outfits, because even
Well, a
Habaku's
mix of the
clothes,
two.
it's like Habaku's clothing is like it's different, but it's not radically different. The color scheme is still essentially similar to Habaku's primary colors. So, like, it could be like I'm assuming that Sojiro will have new, cooler armor, and for all we know, more swords, because that guy is all about
He only
swords.
needs one.
Yes, he is already his sword.
Yes.
Um, the only one that like I'm really unsure about is like Shiori because Shiori already has a really suitable art style for her, or a suitable design for her art. But like I don't know, maybe like
And she also
something out.
doesn't like
She'll
to stay
definitely.
the same.
She also doesn't like to stay the same. That's true. I'm assuming she'll have like uh, possibly gauntlets or like something really cool on her arms to accentuate because she's she's a
I'm
close
still
quarter combat
so
fighter.
miffed she didn't fight Otake
She didn't
properly.
fight what?
Otake.
Yeah. Um, but yes, she's basically a pugilist, so I'm assuming this will be there. Um, Yako, well, Yako is an interesting question, but I'm assuming you'll have a cool new extra tuning cloak, and
Yako and Ryusu in general have this dynamic of yin and yang, so I suppose
yeah,
it will remain the
yeah,
same.
yeah. Like Yako is dressed in black, she's dressed in white. She's tall, he's tall, she's short. So yes, I'm assuming like I didn't actually see it as Meiji police uniform because like the gauntlet on his hand actually didn't seem. It almost seemed it actually looks a little demonic to be honest.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
he has more of a yes.
remember his entire dragon motif.
Yeah, of course.
So,
Um, but yes, I do look forward. However, like I said before, I look forward to see Rendo's new design.
yes.
Okay.
And his last question is how many Rinko faces do you think Amaterasu will make?
I think she'll make quite a few. If only because she seems like a very expressionable character.
Yes.
She seems like a very outgoing, very outspoken
And
character.
in general, G's face game has improved very much since Dies Irae.
Yes, it has.
Like even in Kajiri Kamikagure, you have the likes of uh, Ryusu, you have Nico, you have even Shiori, and so on.
Yeah,
And in Senshinkan, well, Rinko is not the only one who makes some good faces,
not at all.
right? And well, we did have some more questions. I'm not sure how to
Give
answer.
it,
So,
give it to him. Give it to him.
right,
Let him
so,
have it.
all right. So, one Spidey Day asks, where do I go for souk?
You go over to my place, my friend. You go over to my place. I'll give you
Yes.
silk.
You follow us on Twitter, you follow us on YouTube, and you follow us until the next episode, which will actually be released around October, I believe.
And on a more personal level, you go over to me for silk.
Yes. Well, either way, I suppose that's all we have to talk about for today. I hope you will have a great vacation in Japan.
Yes, I'm actually going away for a month now to
Yes.
Japan. So
Don't forget to beat all the Tenmas over there.
I
Uh,
will.
yes.
I'll try. It might be hard.
Yes. Hopefully, we will have some more things to talk about before you arrive, and hopefully, it won't take us uh, that long to discuss them. But anyway, until next time, as I said, don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Twitter, and the like. Do ask us anything you like. We will do our best to answer all of the questions you give us. And we will see you in the Hall of Valhalla. Goodbye.
Bye.